Hello again to everyone joining us today. As stated, my name is Melanie Rybar, and I'll be going through North America or the Americas with you today. Next slide, please. We're going to work our way from north to south, so we'll start with Canada. Next slide. Where amendments to Canada's cosmetics regulations were proposed in early February and would increase transparency in labeling for certain fragrance allergens. The big takeaway from this proposal is that Canada is trying to align their labeling requirements for these fragrance allergens with the EU's cosmetics regulation. And if it were to pass, the industry would have 2 years after the publication to transition their labels. Next slide, please. Here, I wanted to highlight a notice of intent that was published by Health Canada and the ECCC in January. It's not specific to cosmetics products, but I included it because it speaks to, the regulatory environment in Canada right now, where they're trying to ban or reduce animal testing in multiple areas. This notice of intent specifically discussed considering regulatory changes to the new substance notification regulations. And there's also language currently in the S5 bill, which is the CEPA reform bill, that would recognize the importance of alternatives to animal test methods. So just again, not cosmetic specific, but speaks to the regulatory landscape. Next slide, please. And I wanted to highlight that because there is a specific proposal addressing an animal testing ban for cosmetics. It is actually within the draft federal budget of this year. There are proposed amendments to the Food and Drugs Act, again, which would work towards restricting testing cosmetics on animals. And the approach here would likely align with animal testing ban in the EU as well. And another important note is that Canada is hosting the World Congress on Alternatives and Animal Use in the Life Sciences at the end of this summer. So we're expecting to see some sort of movement with animal testing in this area, because we're expecting the host country will want to be able to point towards progress they're making in this area as the host of this meeting. So no exact timeline, but we're expecting movement by the end of the summer. Next slide, please. And the last thing I have for you in Canada is just an update proposed update to the cosmetics ingredient hot list. This is an administrative tool that Health Canada uses to communicate which substances may be prohibited or restricted for use in cosmetics. There are 16 total chemicals being addressed in this draft in the proposal. On the slide here, I have the 6 that would be brand new to the list. So there are 4 that would have brand new and have restrictions, 2 with prohibitions, and then the other 10 were already on the list previously, but have some administrative changes to them. So if this is something applicable to your products, you'll want to go take a look at that. Next slide, please. Here we're moving on to the US. So next slide, where the biggest news in my nerdy corner of the regulatory world is the passage of the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act, which I will be referring to as MOCRA. I don't know if that's the official shorthand for it yet, but I don't think I'm the only one using it. So this law was signed at the end of last year, and similar to how the Food and Drug Act is amendments in Canada have amendments proposed in a spending bill. This one passed in a spending bill as well. And what I've included on the slide for you here are all of the previous standalone cosmetics bills that were introduced at the federal level starting in 2021 prior to the passage of MOCRA. And the interesting thing about this is that if you compare these 4 other bills to what eventually passed as MOCRA, you'll see that bits and pieces of each of these were taken to and put together to become what is now MOCRA. So it just speaks to how important horizon scanning is and paying attention to what is being introduced in legislation, even if there's no traction or movement on those bills, because I'm pretty, if I remember correctly, I don't think any of these bills really moved much further than their initial introduction. But you never know what's going on behind the scenes, you know. So next slide, please. So with all that, to dive into the actual specifics of MOCRA and stop the background info, the MOCRA does two main things. The first is that it expands the FDA's authority under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act for the very first time. So some of those new requirements that the FDA has, they are now required to develop and issue GMP regulations specific to cosmetics products. They are now required to develop test methods for asbestos and PFAS in cosmetics products, and there are timelines associated with both of those. And then the FDA now has the ability to issue voluntary and mandatory recalls. Then the second big thing are the new requirements for industry, the biggest of which is the deadline at the end of this year, where registering facilities and cosmetics products registrations are due at the end of this year. And those registrations of your products do include having to list out the ingredients of those products. And then the other important thing to note about these registrations is that prior to the passage of MOCRA, there was a voluntary cosmetic registration program in place, the VCRP. And so when MOCRA passed, I think it was natural to ask the question, like, is the FDA just going to transition this voluntary program, take it as is, and transition it into now a mandatory program? But what actually happened is in late March, the FDA actually shut down this voluntary program and the platform that it ran on. And there is currently no information about when the new platform is going to be available. So even if you have all your ducks in a row and you are ready to register your facilities, your products, and list all of your ingredients, you just kind of have to hurry up and wait right now. So just keep an eye out for that. The FDA did say that they will announce, you know, when they have a timeline so that you can plan accordingly. And then the other two things that I wanted to highlight just to make sure nobody's forgetting that about these other requirements is that there are new substantiation requirements for the safety of cosmetics products, and there are new reporting requirements for any side effects caused by cosmetics products. So companies, after you get all your registrations out of the way, companies will need to look at their internal compliance to address these other things. So look at how you receive customer complaints, look how much, if you have enough and up-to-date safety substantiation for all of your products. So that'll just be more work to do behind the scenes. Next slide, please. And lastly, the enactment of MOCRA is going to help create national standards for cosmetics products. However, you have to keep in mind that in the US, states still retain the authority to regulate the use of specific ingredients. So even if you're in compliance at the federal level, you need to pay attention to what's going on in all 50 states as well. Currently, for this year, we are tracking over 60 bills that are addressing personal care products. The majority of those are cosmetics. The bills are discussing cosmetics. The ones I've highlighted for you here today are the ones that have gained some traction. So in New York, at the end of last year, they passed a restriction on mercury in cosmetics products. And then early this year, they passed an amendment to that bill. So if you were aware of the first one, I just wanted to highlight that, you know, you want to take a look at both bills to make sure you're in compliance with the mercury restrictions there. The other states I have here, California already has a list of chemicals that are restricted in cosmetics products, and this bill, AB 496, is looking to expand upon that list with an additional 42 chemical substances. And if it passed as it's currently written, those restrictions would come into force in 2027. Hawaii, Nevada, and Vermont, all of their bills are addressing PFAS in cosmetics products. And Washington, this was in draft when I wrote this slide, but has actually since passed and is addressing personal care products in lodging establishments or hotels. And their definition of personal care does include cosmetics, I believe, specifically, and it would restrict those personal health and beauty products offered in these establishments would be prohibited from being in plastic containers or single-use plastic. So another angle to consider there. Next slide, please. Yeah, and with that, my last jurisdiction for you today is Latin America. Next slide, please. Where I just have two things I wanted to highlight. But before I dive into that, I wanted to just touch on an overview of how cosmetics regulations work in Brazil. The Ministry of Health controls the manufacture and import of all cosmetics products, but it is Anvisa, the National Health Surveillance Agency, that is the main authority responsible for the registrations and notifications of those products. And so the Department of Cosmetics within Anvisa is the specific department managing these things. So it's just important to keep those different things in mind. Cosmetics in Brazil are also generally classified as just grade 1 or grade 2 products, and that impacts the level of regulatory requirements you have. And then at the bottom here, I just have the definition. In Brazil, it's cosmetics are really including toiletries, perfumes, and cosmetics are all lumped together to mean cosmetics. And this definition is in the resolution RDC 752 from 2022, which is the current active law regulating cosmetics in the country. Next slide, please. This slide, I just wanted to include some examples of what a grade 1 and a grade 2 product could be. But the main takeaway, this slide is for you to look closer at later, but the main takeaway is that grade 1 cosmetics only require notification to Anvisa, while grade 2 cosmetics require registration. Next slide, please. And so with all of that background information, the newest thing I wanted to highlight in Brazil is the passage of a law permitting active ingredients in cosmetic products for straightening or curling hair. This was passed at the end of last year and would come into force. Sorry, I misspoke. That's the other one. This one was published in April and comes into force just a couple of days ago. And it establishes a list of active ingredients permitted for use in cosmetics products. These types of cosmetics products are considered class 2, so they do require registration. And the bill highlights maximum concentration levels and other things that I've highlighted there on the slide, and some warning label requirements for each that are specific to each additive. So you'll want to look at the specific active ingredients that are applicable to you and proceed accordingly. Next slide, please. Last but not least, what I have is an update on the Andean community, which includes Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. This technical regulation is the one that passed at the end of last year, so apologies for the mix-up. And it is coming into it is going to be enforced at the end of next year, so a 2-year transition period there. This labeling regulation applies to cosmetics products as defined in Decision 833. That regulation was passed back in 2019, and it was the Andean community trying to harmonize the quality and health and safety standards for marketing cosmetic products in the region. So it's just, I wanted to highlight that just to make a callback to that previous regulation. But it's actually a little bit repetitive because cosmetics products are also identified in this new legislation under Annex 1. So you can check that list in either place to see if it impacts your products. And then the bill, so again, has new labeling requirements, and I highlighted a few of the main points here. Labeling information must be provided on a firmly attached label. There are product warnings, special precautions and restriction requirement specifications that must be on the label. One of the big updates is that expiration dates now are now mandatory on labeling if the shelf life is less than 24 months. If the shelf life is more than 24 months, you have to have testing data to prove that, and there's some language in the resolution talking more specifically about that. And then they go through and specify mandatory labeling requirements for small containers or packages. So you can compare what you have to have on your larger packaging versus what can be left off of the labels on your smaller containers. Next slide, please. And that is all I have for you today. So I will now pass on the mic to Sok-Han.
Thank you very much, Melanie. And hi, everyone. My name is Sok-Han and I'm a Senior Regulatory and Compliance Analyst from Chemical Watch. I will bring you updates from the rest of the world today. So buckle up while we kick off with updates from Europe. Next slide, please. So first of all, last year on November 10th, the Commission Regulation EU 2022 of 2195 was issued to establish restrictions in Annex 3 for BHT, which is a substance used as an antioxidant in cosmetic products. It has also established restrictions in the same annex for acid yellow 3, which is also used as a hair dye substance. And they have also amended the existing labeling requirements in Annex 3 for the substance resorcinol used as hair dye to include the statement, "Do not use to dye eyelashes." These amendments are applicable from 1st of January next year. Additionally, the substance HAA299, which is used as a UV filter in cosmetic products, was added to Annex 6, and further restrictions for the use of UV filter homosalate in cosmetic products were also added. These amendments are applicable from July 2025 in 2 years' time. Next slide, please. Next, the EU has also issued draft amendments to propose that additional fragrance allergens are individually labeled on the package of cosmetic products if their concentration exceeds 0.001% in leave-on products and 0.01% in rinse-off products. It further introduces some updates and simplifications in the names of those substances. These amendments are incorporated into Annex 3 of the Cosmetic Regulation 1223 of 2009. Companies should note that the proposed amendments with regards to the new restrictions, labeling amendments, and other measures for the stated substances. And to provide some kind of a timeline for you, these amendments are expected to be adopted in the first half of 2023 this year, and they are expected to enter into force 20 days from its publication in the official journals. There will be a transitional period 3 years after the date of from the date of enforcement. Cosmetics containing the substance or those substances and not complying with the restrictions shall not be placed on the union market, and 5 years from its enforcement, they shall not be made available on the union market. Next slide, please. And next, we move on to updates from the Middle Eastern region. Next slide, please. We have updates for you from Israel. Next slide, please. So, excuse me. Israel published the latest pharmacist regulations for cosmetic products for 2023 last month. The registration sets the regulations set the requirements for producing, distributing, and importing cosmetics. Product-specific license is no longer required. Instead, dealers in cosmetic products must register in the cosmetic products dealer register. An application for a cosmetic product or license or its renewal shall be submitted online and include the following information that you can see on the screen here. So you will need to supply the name of the applicant or the name of the general manager if the applicant is a corporation, the identity numbers such as your value-added tax, corporate ID, business description of the business activities, the business address, the types of cosmetics produced, imported, stored, or distributed, a declaration of conformity with ISO 22716, the good manufacturing practices, guidelines on good manufacturing practices, or the equivalent technical documents approved by the Director General of the Ministry of Health, the business license, permit, or approval when they are required, and the proof of payment of the required fees. Next slide, please. Next, the responsible representatives must register in the responsible representative database. The duties of the representative is also clarified, and they include the following. They are supposed to maintain the cosmetic product file, the safety assessment documents, good manufacturing, storage, and distribution practices, the labels and packaging, supply chain and batch tracking of the cosmetic products in circulation, management of public inquiries, side effects, and product claims, notifications, and meeting the regulatory requirements, and also handling complaints and preventing the use of harmful cosmetic products. All these changes are leading Israel to transit from a pre-market approval system, whereby in the previous system, product-specific licenses were required before entering in the market, entering into the Israeli market, but they are transiting to a post-market surveillance system where the cosmetic companies are being held responsible for the safety and quality of their products. Next slide, please. And now we move on to the cosmetic regulatory updates in Asia. First off, we have regulatory updates in the ASEAN region. Next slide, please. So ASEAN amended the nexus to the ASEAN Cosmetic Directive in accordance with the 36th ASEAN Cosmetic Scientific Board meeting discussions on the 23rd of January this year. These amendments will enter into force from 21st of November next year. Some of the main changes are as follows, as what you can see on the screen here. So 42 new prohibited ingredients were added to Annex 2, which is the list of substances that must not form part of the composition of cosmetic products. These are generally ingredients that have already been identified as CMR substances and already banned in the EU. So this better aligns the ACD closer to the EU cosmetic regulatory framework. The amendment also revised the use of salicylic acid and titanium oxide in Annex 3. The use of restrictions of titanium oxide as a colorant in Annex 4 has also been clarified, and the use restrictions of salicylic as a preservative under Annex 6 has also been revised. And last but not least, the use restrictions of titanium oxide as a UV filter in cosmetics. Next slide, please. You'll be able to see the details of the new restrictions added for salicylic as highlighted on screen here in yellow for Annex 3. Next slide, please. Similarly, you'll be able to see the newly added restrictions for salicylic acid preservatives here highlighted in yellow. The next slide, please. And last but not least, these are the new restrictions added for titanium oxide as a UV filter. You'll be able to see the changes highlighted in yellow. Next slide, please. And next, we move on to updates in China. So China's National Medical Products Administration, the NMPA, has issued an administrative measures for the sampling inspection of cosmetics on 12th of January this year. The NMPA will develop a national cosmetic sampling inspection plan, which will be coordinated at the national, provincial, and city level. The sampling inspection of cosmetics will focus on the below six categories. Cosmetic producers and operators will not be informed in advance, of course, of the sampling. So the targeted products are children's products, special use cosmetics, cosmetics containing new ingredients, cosmetics which are or have been subject to adverse reaction monitoring, safety risk monitoring, complaints, reports, public opinion monitoring, and cosmetics which have a fairly high, which have a relatively high failure rate of previous inspections, sampling inspections, those that are in high circulation with a high frequency of use, and last but not least, those with high safety risks. Samples can be taken from both on-site and online operations. Manufacturers, distributors, or cosmetic operators will be reimbursed for the cosmetics sampled. Typically, this will be the price of either the factory price for manufacturers and the market price for distributors or retailers. Companies whose sampling results do not meet the requirements may face penalties such as fines, investigations, and other corresponding measures. The measures will has entered into force from 1st of March this year. And please note that the sampling records are retained by the authorities for 6 years. So these can definitely affect how often your product may be sampled if it has already failed such sampling inspections before. Next slide, please. Further, the NMPA has also issued a notice to further optimize the safety information management measures of cosmetic ingredients on the 27th of March 2023. The notice clarifies that cosmetic ingredient safety information mainly includes ingredient quality specifications, safety risk measures taken, safety risk assessment conclusions, and other information related to ingredient safety. And so what happens in these new measures is that from 1st of January 2024 next year, when applying for the registration of special use cosmetics or the filing of general use cosmetics, cosmetic registrants and filers must file in the safety information of all ingredients used in the formulation. For cosmetics that have been registered or filed before 1st of May 2021, if the formulation uses ingredients that are subject to quality specifications of the safety and technical specifications for cosmetics, the filer or registrant must submit the required information before the 1st of January 2024 next year. For cosmetics registered or filed between 1st of May 2021 and 31st of December 2023, if the formulation uses ingredients such as antiseptic, sunscreen, coloring, hair dye, anti-freckles, or whitening functions, the registrant or filer must supplement and submit the quality specification certification documents or the ingredient safety information of the relevant ingredients before 1st of January 2024. The safety information of other ingredients in the product formula must be kept by the registrant and filer for future reference. And this is something that this submission deadline has been extended from 1st of May this year, which was the original implementation date when it was first introduced in 2021. through the implementation of Decree 727, which is the underlying cosmetic regulatory framework in China. So this delay was to give companies more time during the pandemic to be able to supplement all this information. Next slide, please. And next, China's Administration for Market Registration, the SAMR, issued these finalized measures to regulate the management of toothpaste on 16th of March on 16th of March this year, and will enter into force from 1st of December 2023 this year. Toothpaste will be managed as a general use cosmetic and require notification before distribution or use. The filer will be responsible for the quality, safety, and efficacy claims of the toothpaste. The measures clarifies things such as the responsibilities of stakeholders, the definition of toothpaste, which is a paste-like product that is applied to the surface of human teeth by friction with the main purpose of cleaning. The management requirements for toothpaste products and new ingredients, the requirements for its safety assessment, efficacy claims and labeling, and also ongoing use of existing toothpaste production licensing system. New ingredients for toothpaste must comply with the relevant regulations on the management of new ingredients for cosmetics. Those with efficacy claims such as antiseptic and coloring functions may be only used after they have been registered with the MMPA, and other new ingredients for toothpaste must be filed. New toothpaste ingredients that have been registered or filed are subject to a safety monitoring period of 3 years. Those that are found to have to not have any safety problems will be added to the list of existing toothpaste ingredients after 3 years. If there are no provisions in these measures, the measures for the administration of registration and filing of cosmetics and the measurements for supervision and administration of cosmetic production and operation shall apply by reference. Next slide, please. And next, here we have the list of dossier requirements for the filer or the domestic responsible person when doing the filing of the toothpaste products. You will need to supply the agency authority with the name, address, and contact information of the filer and the manufacturer, the product name, formulation, the executive standard for the product label samples, inspection report, and also safety assessment materials. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we have the labeling requirements for toothpaste. As what you can see here, these are the minimum information that has to be reflected on the label of the toothpaste. You will need the product name, the name or an address of the filer and the interested manufacturer. If the filer is overseas, the name and address of the domestic responsible person, the name of and address of the manufacturer, and for locally manufactured toothpaste, the manufacturing license number of the manufacturer as well. They will also need the executive standard number, the complete ingredients list, net content, period of use, warning statements, and also according to the characteristics of the product, the method of use shall be marked on the visible side of the sales package. Next slide, please. Next, China's National Institutes for Food and Drug Control, also known as the NIFDC, issued a public consultation on the technical guidelines for anti-freckles and whitening cosmetics research and the technical guidelines for research on the efficacies of anti-freckles and whitening cosmetic ingredients on March 17th. The two guidelines are formulated to regulate and guide the research and evaluation of cosmetic and ingredients for anti-freckles and whitening products. Among other guidelines, the use of registered new ingredients as antifreckles and whitening efficacies must comply with the purpose, scope of applications or use, safe use amount, and other restrictions and requirements of the registered new ingredients. The use of new ingredients within the monitoring period should also be authorized and confirmed by the new ingredient registrant. Timely feedback on the use and the safety of new ingredients should be provided to the cosmetic ingredient registrant of the new ingredients. Next slide, please. China has also finalized its first measures of supervision and administration online cosmetic operations, which aims to ensure the quality and safety of cosmetics sold online in the country. The measures specify that cosmetics e-commerce platform operators must require cosmetic operators applying to the platform to submit real information such as identity, address, contact information, conduct verification and registration, establish registration files, verify and update this information at least every 6 months. They are also required to keep the identity information of cosmetic operators on the platform for at least 3 years from the date of their withdrawal from the platform. Establish daily inspections of cosmetic operators on the platform, including online product information release inspections and also an inspection of their daily operating activities. They should also conduct routine inspections that must be formulated with an inspection plan, clarifying the inspection object, frequency, content, and the records of these routine inspections must include the identity information of the cosmetic operators on the inspection platform, the contents, results, disposal measures, and other informations. And all these must be kept for at least 2 years from the date of the inspection. Next slide, please. Platform operators who find that cosmetic operators on the platform are suspected of illegally operating cosmetics must take necessary measures such as deletion, blocking, or disconnection of links in accordance with the law or the platform service agreement and transaction rules to stop the illegal activities in a timely manner and save the evidence for such operations. They must provide or forward this information to the provincial MMPA department where the cosmetic operator is registered with within 10 days of discovery of such illegal activities. And by illegal or suspicious activities, we are referring to those that causes systematic damage to the human body, endangering life or causing death due to the use of these online products. There is evidence that the cosmetic operated online may be using raw materials that are actually prohibited for use or illegally added that may endanger our health, and also those that have caused widespread concern due to the quality and safety issues. Next slide, please. In addition to the requirements in the draft, compared to the previous draft version, the finalized measures also pointed out that cosmetic operators on the platform must pay attention to the regulatory public information on the quality and safety of the cosmetic products they operate. For specific batches of cosmetics that have been determined to be non-compliant through these sampling inspections, the cosmetic operators must immediately either stop the sale of such products, or if they continue to do so, disclose the regulatory public information on the non-compliance of the sampling inspection or the inspection report on the non-compliance product in a prominent manner. The information should continue to be displayed for 1 year for consumers to refer to when making their purchase. The measures, however, do not apply to those products that are engaged. Do not apply to products that are engaged in cross-border e-commerce retail products, that means imported cosmetics. Such operators must abide by the relevant national regulations on the supervision of cross-border e-commerce retail imported commodities. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we move on to updates in South Korea. Next slide, please. So stay on this slide, please. South Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety revised the regulations of safety standards for cosmetics on the 21st of February this year to remove some hair dyes from the list of chemicals that were previously permitted for use with restrictions to become prohibited ingredients in cosmetics. The following substances that you see on the screen here are those that have been added to Table 1 of the regulations that are belonging to the list of prohibited ingredients. And so these changes will enter into force from the 21st of August this year. And cosmetics that were manufactured or imported in accordance with the previous regulations have a 2-year grace period until 21st of August 2025 to continue its sales, display, storage, or operations for the purpose of sales. Next slide, please. And straight out from the oven yesterday, based on the risk assessment results, including the current status of excluded countries, the ingredients shown on the screen here are those that are newly being proposed to be added to the list of ingredients that cannot be used in cosmetics. Additionally, the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety has also proposed revisions to the list of hair dyes that are allowed for use in cosmetic products. So interested stakeholders have until the 4th of July to submit any comments, and you can send it through the email address to link here. Once promulgated, the amendments will enter into force within 6 months of its promulgation. Cosmetics that were manufactured or imported in accordance with the previous regulations will similarly have a 2-year grace period to continue its sales, display, or storage for the purpose of sales. Next slide, please. South Korea has also proposed a draft amendment in the enforcement rules of cosmetics on the 28th of February this year, including the revision of certain registration or notification data input requirements, such as replacing the requirement of date of birth with the resident registration number. They have also made minor textual changes that has no regulatory impact, and they have also revised the qualifications of the responsible sales manager, as what you can see on the screen here. And they are also proposing to remove the requirement that the customized cosmetics dispensing manager must have at least 1 year of work experience in cosmetics manufacturing or quality control, in addition to passing the quality qualification test. Next slide, please. South Korea's MSDS has also issued a public consultation on the draft amendment of the Cosmetic Act in March. And this proposed revision aims to clarify the scope of what is considered to be an inappropriate or misleading labeling or advertisement in cosmetics. The proposed revision will clarify the definition of pharmaceuticals, functional cosmetics, and other natural and organic cosmetics. The MFDS hopes that this would deter cosmetic operators from claiming efficacies beyond the scope of cosmetics, and the consultation period ended on the 2nd of May. Next slide, please. And finally, we have reached the end of our presentation. I would just like to remind you of our focused compliance solutions. It combines our proprietary regulatory data tool with analyst support